guys, it's me, Donnee Patrese. I am back with another video on how to start your novel. And one of the things that, as I was working on my novel, which is why it's been a while since I posted a new video, is while I've been basically just completely swamped with working on my novel. I got in the zone and I wanted to keep it going, so I basically just didn't want to break that up. I just decided to keep writing and that I would make a video as soon as I got a chance. But one of the things that as I was working, that came to my mind was a lot of the things that I do on as I write is I try very hard to make it interesting, to make my writing exciting while also telling an important story. And that's something that you want to strive to do as you write. And basically, you don't want to bore your readers. So this video is on how not to bore your readers. You don't want to bore them to death by doing some of these things that we're going to talk about in a minute. Because it can, they could read the first chapter and just decide that they do not want to go any further. And that's not something you want as you're writing this novel. So this is something that you can do ahead of time and not wait until after the novel's out there and then hear all this feedback and then you say, oh, I want to do this in my next novel. No, we're going to work on that and do that now. We're going to put our best foot forward and make sure that we don't bore our readers. And that a lot of writers do as they write is to show and not tell. So what I mean by show and not tell is, for example, you have a character who has a lot of anxiety. And when you tell about it, you just say, hey, this character has a lot of anxiety. That's not very interesting. That's not very creative. So you want to let your creative juices flow and try something different. So you want to show it. And to show it is say, okay, this character has anxiety. So for me, anxiety means wringing of the hands, being really acting really nervous, feeling a tightness in their chest, something along those lines. So you want to show it in those ways instead of just saying this person has anxiety. So another thing is, and this is something that's really important to me because as a writer, I tend to use a lot of, synonyms for a lot of words because you use a lot of words over and over again. So me being somebody who has a habit of using things over and over again, I have to work on using different words to express the same thing and using a lot of synonyms, pulling out that thesaurus if I need to, and using a synonym to describe something instead of saying it over and over and over again. Keeping it simple. So even though you want to pull out that thesaurus and use those really big words, I suggest that you keep it simple. It's common to want to use big words to describe things in general. However, if it's not needed, use the simpler term. So I would go simple because too many big words, if your readers need to read your book with a dictionary, they're not going to want to take that time to do that. So if this is an educational book, maybe, but for entertainment purposes, that's not something that I want to do. Another thing you might want to do to keep it interesting to your readers is to end chapters with a cliffhanger. So it doesn't have to be a massive cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, but you want it to be something that keeps them going and makes them want to read the next chapter and follow along in the story. So you don't want to say, okay, they went to bed and turned out the light and that was it. You want it to be a little bit something else to say, okay, they turned out the light, they went to bed, and a crash. It's something simple, and that's how you end the chapter. So then they're like, well, what was the crash? I want to know what's going on. So they turn the page. They go to the next chapter. Like, that's what I'm saying when I say end it with a slight cliffhanger so that readers want to turn the page. So another thing that I do, and I love writing dialogue. I love having some really good dialogue, some good conversation between my characters, some inner dialogue as well. But I've seen some writers where they'll have a whole 2 pages worth of words and things and there is no dialogue. So there's just 2 pages without dialogue. To me, that reads like a book report. That reads like an essay. I want some dialogue. I want to, even if it's just a couple of lines of dialogue, I want some characters to interact in those couple pages. It keeps the novel moving and it keeps people interested in the story and in the characters. Because if you have some dynamic conversations in there, it's going to keep everything flowing, but it's also going to keep your readers interested. Another thing that I try not to do when I'm writing is I try not to have too many descriptive words all together. So if you use too many words to describe one scene or a person, you may end up boring your readers. I know when I read and there are some paragraphs where they're just describing the hell out of a house. Just describing one house for 3 or 4 paragraphs. Unless that house is extremely important and the story is just about this house, that's way too much description of one place or one thing or one person. To me, that's just way too much. So, or if you're talking about somebody wearing a red dress with blue shoes and gold earrings and red hair, and like you're just describing this person to the T with nothing there. Like, to me, too much description is just not a waste of time. I wouldn't say that. I just feel like as a reader, it might become overwhelming and it becomes boring after a while. And this video is about how not to bore them. And so give only the descriptions that you need. So if you really need to describe this one person, I totally get it. As a writer, like, you want the readers to visualize it. But there's a way to do that without putting it all in one paragraph. There's a way to describe a character or a place that's going to come up a lot without putting it all in one place. You can weave that throughout the story, especially if this is a character or if it's somebody that's going to constantly come up, or there's a place that's going to constantly come up. You can weave that throughout the story and not just pile it all in one place. And another thing that you need to do, that you should do anyway, is make realistic, dynamic characters. So you want to make sure that your characters have a lot of spunk, a lot of pizzazz. Like, there are going to be some boring characters maybe, but anybody that is introduced and anybody that is going to be involved in the plot, in the process with the main character, with the protagonist, the antagonist, anybody who's going to be interacting with them, they want to have some kind of dynamic character about them, something about them that makes them slightly more interesting than normal. Because if you don't have these dynamic characters and these characters are boring and they're just everyday life characters without something to grip the reader, they're going to get bored quick. Even if you have some dynamic dialogue, these characters are not worth following. So nobody's going to listen to them. So it improves the novel and it elevates it when you have really dynamic characters. Okay. So another thing is stay away from passive voice. So try your best to put as much action in the story as possible. So if you, instead of saying she was jumping, she jumped. Off a bridge, I don't know. But just, say, okay, she jumped instead of she was jumping. She was frying, she fried. Like, anything to add some more action to your story. Any small things like that will keep your readers interested and they won't be bored as you write or as they read. All right, and 2 other things. Don't spend too much time on backstory. So I read a story by a writer, and they literally gave from birth to like now in the first chapter. And I was like, whoa, this is way too much of their life in one chapter that you really didn't even need all of it. And there is a chance that as a writer, you might fall into that trap where you know everything there is to know about your character, which is great. You're supposed to know everything about your character. And I've said that in numerous videos. You need to know your characters front and back, their life, their history, when they were born, when the traumatic things in their lives happen. You need to know those things. But not all those things are going to go in this novel in that chapter. Not all of it is going to be just dumped on the reader at once, because all of it you may not even need to know. As a writer, you should know it, but as a reader, they may not even need to know all of that information. So I would say don't spend too much time on backstory. I would say to weave it in, just like you do with the adjectives, with your descriptions. You want to weave that in. So if chapter 1, you discuss something about her life or his life, chapter 3, you might throw a little bit something else in there. Chapter 5, you throw a little bit something else in there with backstory. I try to do that. So like if my character used to be abused, I wouldn't necessarily go through her whole abusive history in chapter 1. I would put bits and pieces of it throughout the story. And then by the end, there's a transformation from that. Because that's one thing you want to do with dynamic characters. They need to have a transforming, life-altering event that happens to them in this novel. And I weave that in throughout the story so that you can see their transformation slowly and not necessarily just their whole life story in chapter 1. And lastly, but not least, I would say have fun when you write. If you're enjoying that chapter, odds are your readers are going to enjoy that chapter. If you're bored while you're writing, trust me, your readers will be bored too. You want to be able to enjoy what you write. I just expressed to someone recently that as I was writing or working on this novel, this current one, that I wrote a chapter and I really, really liked it. Like, I liked it. It was a little, I was like, I really like this chapter. And that happens to me a lot. When I know that I've got something good, when I've got a good novel, it's because I enjoyed it while I was writing. If it seems like, I got to write this, or I'm a little bored writing this, or I'm stuck, you might want to go back, check your outline, see if there's something that you can change, delete. Because if you're not enjoying yourself, your reader isn't. And that's the most important thing. So this video is a little longer than I anticipated, but it's a really important one because you don't want to bore your readers, and that's something you want to do now while you're in the process of writing. You don't want to have to go back and edit and edit and edit and edit to try to get to that point. You can do this in the first draft. You can put those things in there in the first draft, and of course you're going to edit a few times, and you're going to have an editor edit it. And in that process, you want to make sure that you can catch these things in the first draft. That way the second edit, the third edit, the fourth edit won't be so difficult. It won't take you as long. You want to be able to get that so you can start that from the beginning. Okay, so I hope that helps you. I believe that it will help you. It has helped me immensely over the years in writing and getting things taken care of in my novels. And one thing that I make sure that I do is that I enjoy when I write. So if you really like this video, speaking of light, go ahead and subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss all the other videos that I have coming. You're not going to miss where I'm at in my novel, and follow me along as I complete this thing. So go ahead and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check out my novels on Amazon. You can search Prohibited, or you can search Donnee Patrese, and everything should come up for you. Okay, till the next video. Bye, guys.